So I've had my Steam Deck for about 4 months, and surprisingly I haven't gotten into Cyberpunk yet, and I'm really interested to see with patch 1.6 what kind of performance we're getting here, and I really want to play through the game again, especially with cross progression, so Steam Deck might be a great way for me to keep playing. So let's get in and take a look at the settings that we're using here. Now we're going to start off with the Steam Deck settings that they have in Cyberpunk. They actually have a preset named Steam Deck. It's actually not a very good preset, to be honest with you, but we're going to start there. We're going to take off depth of field, lens flare, and motion blur. Those will always be off throughout the whole video, as they should be for testing here, and the rest of the things we'll leave alone for now, but when we get more to like my recommended settings, we're going to tweak this some more. I will use VSync the whole time. I'm just going to leave the max SPS value to 60 for the game itself, and we'll do all of our capping with the Steam Deck itself, which works great in this game for frame times versus just always capping in the game, which you could do. But as we get in here, you will see with those settings what we've got for the Steam Deck preset with those couple of items turned off, FSR on ultra quality, and 60 as our cap with VSync on. Of course, you will dip below 30 from time to time, but you can do a lot with your settings to really minimize that, which we'll get into more. Now, this area of the game is actually a great place to kind of benchmark your settings. It's well known for tanking performance. It does it on consoles as well. On PC, I've used this a lot. The benchmark that's built into the game is not very good for dialing in your settings. But anyway, you can see what kind of performance we're getting walking around this area right here. So I want to go ahead and go in and make some changes. Now, all I'm going to do right here is change over to FSR performance, which I won't really do again in this video. I don't really like it. Even on the smaller screen, it just does get a bit too blurry for me for the upscaling of the resolution. And of course, we do take a hit more on our frame times, as CPU is really the binding factor here when it comes to a lot of this. So I just wanted to show that though. For the most part, FSR I'll be running quality, which I'll show you in a little bit, maybe a little bit of balanced. So let's go ahead and go in here and change this back over. So ultra quality is where Steam Deck puts the setting. I'll pretty much go for quality, especially when I go for my 30 FPS cap, which we'll take a look at here pretty soon. So anyways, this is getting us closer to the settings that I'll be using, although we will be making some more changes as we get into it. And my issue here is really just frame time and frame pacing. Even though you can play the game a little over 30 FPS, it's not always great. So let's go in here and do what I would do for my 30 FPS cap, which is go down through the row with the Steam Deck setting on and just knock each one down one notch. So if it's high, go to medium. If it's medium, go to low, or it'll turn off. And pretty much give that a shot. That's what's working great for me for when I get into the 30 FPS. It just takes a little bit more pressure off the system. Now, of course, you can lower things more, and I will show you the lowest settings a little bit later in the video. And FSR will leave here on quality as well. And now look at the graphics change here. Pretty dramatic, as you'll see right there, but it does help us maintain a bit of a better frame rate. Now, the lower we go from this point doesn't necessarily help us a lot, because there's a lot of, like I said, being bound to the CPU here more than the GPU side of things. So this is kind of my sweet spot for the actual graphics settings, but we still do have crazy frame times and frame pacing going on for the most part. So that's why I tend to like to cap the game at 30, which we're going to do with the Steam Deck setting here by hitting our quick access button. And we're going to go up here and go ahead and cap things to 30 FPS. I prefer doing this with the Steam Deck here. It's better for me overall than just in the game. I know sometimes in-game cap can be better, but for me, the Steam Deck capping has been working better in Cyberpunk, and you can see we'll get a cleaner frame rate, give our system, our CPU, more importantly, a little bit of overhead to work with, so maybe we don't get those dips quite so badly. And of course, our frame times, while not perfect, especially in this area of the game, are much better than what we were dealing with before. And for me, getting another 2 to 10 FPS on top of this, but having that horrible frame pacing, it's just too janky, and I just don't prefer it over the 30 FPS. Now, as we get into driving here, we're nighttime, we've got rain going on, we've got our same settings here as we just had on. 30 is our cap, and everything's pretty good as we drive around the city. Pretty much all of the driving stays pretty consistent, except for when you load in to new areas, you might get a bit of a dip. But for the most part, FPS, frame time, pacing, all of that stays pretty good, which helps when you're driving, that it's not stuttering around or giving you issue. Now, if I switch over here and we go ahead and let things go back up to our 60, and let that go, you'll see here, of course, we get a little bit more FPS, But again, for me, just not really worth it with that type of frame time and pacing, because now the CPU is just not able to feed information to the GPU side of things fast enough to keep the frame time smoother, even with VSync and all that. So for me, that's how it works. And when you get into combat here, a lot of areas stay really steady on the FPS and on the frame time here, which means a lot to me. We've got a little bit less CPU being used right here, which helps a lot, as you can see. And yeah, we're not maxing out the GPUs, but that's okay. We want to have some overhead here with these settings, and it works really well. It's responsive, it's easy to aim, and I'm able to really basically enjoy this game at 30 FPS on the deck. There's a lot of games I'm able to play at 30 FPS on Steam Deck that I wouldn't necessarily be able to play on my higher end PC with my gaming monitor or my TV with a bigger screen. I really need the 60 or higher, but I'm able to get away with it here on the Steam Deck, along with some other games as well. So I guess 30 FPS is going to be the way I continue to play the game here on deck. Now, I want to get into the 40 FPS option of the Steam Deck. So I've used my quick access menu and capped this to 40, which is 40 Hertz on our display, and recorded it that way. And we're just going down to pretty much the lowest settings I can go to here without really adjusting much else. And our FSR will be on balanced. I did have to do that just to kind of help a little bit more, but you'll see I do love the 40 Hertz mode. I love capping a lot of games to 40. It makes a big difference. It can be helpful. In my opinion, though, when it comes to Cyberpunk, it's just not really worth it. Again, because we don't have any overhead, even on the lowest of lowest settings, even on balanced for the FSR, we can't get enough overhead for our CPU to have a nice clean frame time. And when areas like this have a lot going on, it suffers even more. It just can't feed the information fast enough. It's very stuttery. I would rather have a more consistent lower FPS. So what I'm going to do here is the same fight here. I paused the game and switched it over to my 30 cap, and you'll see instantly, even though I am about to die, I'm able to go right to a much better frame time and frame pacing here, which for me, that's why in Cyberpunk, I just can't really recommend the 40 Hertz mode. Of course, you can use it. There's a lot you can do with your settings here. This isn't really a best settings video. Whatever works for you the best and how you enjoy the game, I highly recommend just sticking with. But for me, this is what works. I like 30 FPS in Cyberpunk here. I think it's a good experience no matter what I do with the settings, and I have over 80 hours of testing this game on various systems since its launch. I just, on the Steam Deck, really can't get a great experience over 30 FPS, especially in a lot of different areas of the game. But anyways, guys, I hope you found this video interesting, maybe helps you out a little bit with playing around with what settings you might enjoy playing Cyberpunk at on your Steam Deck. As always, I appreciate you coming to watch. If you haven't already, subscribe, thumbs up, ring the bell, leave me your comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.